He didn't shout, he didn't need to. One simple question stopped the entire room cold. Did the FBI find a safe in Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan home? What happened next wasn't a denial, it was hesitation, silence, deflection. And that silence told the whole story. Because when Congressman Ted Lieu pressed FBI Director Patel on the most infamous investigation of the decade, the nation suddenly realized something terrifying. The people who promised transparency might be hiding the biggest secrets of all. The exchange looked ordinary at first. Just another oversight hearing, another polished bureaucrat dodging uncomfortable questions.
Now elected. I was sitting talking to Epstein, and he said, "Wait a minute, I got to show you something." And then he went into his safe, and he came out with photographs. They were Polaroids, I think, and he kind of spread them out like playing cards, and it was Trump. I mean, I think there were a dozen of them, and it was Trump with girls of an uncertain age at Epstein's Palm Beach house, where all of the things that he would ultimately be accused of took place. And I remember very vividly 3 of them. There are 2 in which Trump is, the girls, topless girls, are sitting on Trump's lap. And then a 3rd in which he has a stain on the front of his pants. And the girls are kind of pointing at it, sort of bent over, laughing.
So Director Patel, I'm going to ask you a very broad and general question. As you know, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends. There are, of course, photos showing Donald Trump together with Epstein, correct?
I don't have the entirety of the photographs, but I think they've been photographed in public together.
All right. Are there any photos showing Donald Trump with girls of an uncertain age?
No.
How do you know that?
Because that information would have been brought to light by multiple administrations and FBI investigators over the course of the last 20 years.
Well, you know what? That's just not true, because no one knew about the creepy birthday message that Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein until the Wall Street Journal disclosed it, and then all of a sudden, the Epstein estate provides it to Congress.
Well,
so certainly, you weren't there at the search. You don't know what Epstein may or may not have done with those photographs even prior to the search. Maybe someone has it. Maybe the Epstein estate has it.
You raise a great point.
So I'm going to ask you, have you asked to talk to Michael Wolff?
You raise a great point. I haven't personally asked to talk to Michael Wolff.
Has the FBI asked?
But the FBI, I'll get back to you if the FBI specifically
so Michael Wolff
has
has
ever.
About 100 hours of testimony of Jeffrey Epstein. Wouldn't it be good for the FBI to interview Michael Wolff?
I'm not saying they haven't. I just don't know.
Has FBI subpoenaed the tapes that Michael Wolff has conducted of Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know.
All right. So if you could provide us an answer, that would be terrific.
Sure.
Well, let me ask you this question then. Have you looked at all the photos in Epstein files?
I have looked at all the information that the investigators who investigated this case have provided to run out credible leads.
And in the Epstein file, was there that creepy birthday message that Donald Trump had written to Epstein?
No, that's what I was trying to tell you. You raise a great point. The estate of Jeffrey Epstein has a voluminous amount of information that they have not released before.
Okay, so that's great. So wouldn't it be great if FBI subpoenaed the estate of Jeffrey Epstein for all that information?
The estate is under no obligation to provide that material, even pursuant to a subpoena. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's just false.
Okay.
That's just false. You're the frickin' FBI. You can subpoena the information from the estate, and you better do that.
That's literally not how it works.
I'm going to move on now and talk about Epstein's client list. You confirmed that it exists. Attorney General Pam Bondi confirmed earlier this year that it exists. So I just want to ask you a simple question. Is Prince Andrew on Epstein's client list?
The material related to Prince Andrew has been made public.
Is Prince Andrew on the client list?
We have released the index of names that were in Jeffrey Epstein's.
Is Donald Trump on Epstein's client list?
The index has been released, and the index will speak for itself.
So I'm just going to say, America, there's a huge red flag. The FBI director could not answer whether Donald Trump was on Epstein's
Gentleman's time has
list.
expired.
I
Now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the director for being here and for his...
But as the seconds ticked by, the tension in that room built like static before a storm. Patel stumbled. He stuttered. He repeated, "I'll accept your representation." In plain English, "I don't know." The man in charge of the Epstein files didn't know what was in the safe everyone has been talking about since 2019, or maybe he did, and couldn't say. Either way, it was the same result: more shadows, less truth. That's when Lieu dropped the hammer. He reminded Patel the FBI itself searched Epstein's Manhattan mansion. He reminded him that the New York Times reported, in black and white, that photographs of young girls were discovered inside that very safe. He cited the date, the article, the evidence. And Patel, the nation's top investigator, said he didn't have the catalog in front of him. A convenient line that suddenly made half the country wonder what else he didn't have in front of him. But that wasn't even the explosive part. Lieu played a clip of author Michael Wolff describing what Epstein himself once showed him: a collection of Polaroids pulled straight from that safe. Wolff claimed Epstein spread them out like playing cards. The faces in those pictures weren't strangers, they were the powerful, the famous, the untouchable, the kind of people you'd never expect to see connected to a crime like this. Viewers froze. Was this exaggeration? Or had Epstein really kept proof of his reach locked away, a vault of leverage hidden behind a steel door? Patel didn't confirm it. He didn't deny it. He simply dodged. Lieu pressed harder, asking if the FBI had ever subpoenaed Wolff's tapes, interviewed him, or reviewed the recordings Epstein allegedly made. Each time Patel's answer was the same: I don't know. To the public, it didn't sound like an investigator protecting a case. It sounded like an institution protecting itself. Because if Wolff's account is even half true, those photos weren't just evidence, they were blackmail currency. And the real question isn't what Epstein did, it's who he did it for. But when you look deeper, the problem gets bigger. Patel's fallback defense was simple: that multiple administrations have reviewed the Epstein evidence for 20 years and found nothing implicating any sitting officials. That sounds reassuring, until you remember that new evidence still surfaces every year. The creepy birthday message the world learned about, that didn't come from the FBI. It came from the Wall Street Journal, years later, after the Epstein estate voluntarily handed it to Congress. So if that slipped through the cracks, what else did? Lieu knew exactly what that meant. The FBI never disclosed everything. Maybe not intentionally, maybe buried in paperwork, but hidden nonetheless. He called it out. You weren't there at the search. You don't know what Epstein might have done with those photographs before you ever arrived. The audience behind him murmured. Patel hesitated again, and in that hesitation something cracked. The myth of total transparency began to crumble, because here's the uncomfortable truth: for all the talk about justice, the investigation into Epstein's network still has gaping holes. Patel claimed the FBI couldn't subpoena Epstein's estate, that it had no obligation to hand over files. But that's simply not how the law works. Federal subpoenas can compel estates to produce evidence relevant to ongoing investigations, especially when public interest is overwhelming. If the FBI hasn't even tried, that's not just inaction, that's avoidance. So the obvious question became, why? Why draw a line at an estate filled with evidence? Why stop short of retrieving the rest of Epstein's archive, the computers, hard drives, financial logs, private journals, or those rumored recordings of world leaders? It isn't about what the FBI can do, it's about what it chooses to do. And when those choices align with silence, the public has every right to question who benefits from that silence. Lieu shifted gears, aiming for the issue the world keeps asking about: the client list. The mysterious index supposedly documenting Epstein's high-profile associates, the one everyone swears exists, but no one can seem to produce in full. Is Prince Andrew on it? Lieu asked. Patel replied carefully. Material related to Prince Andrew has been made public. That wasn't an answer. Is Donald Trump on it? Again deflection. The index has been released, and it will speak for itself. Except it doesn't. The so-called index released to the public is a maze of initials and redactions, no full names, no context, no clarity, just letters that could mean anything or anyone. And that's the genius of bureaucratic opacity. Technically something is released. Functionally, nothing is revealed. To most Americans watching, it felt like déjà vu. Decades of hearings, sound bites, promises of transparency, and then, blackout. Once again, those at the top seemed immune from scrutiny, shielded not by innocence, but by procedure. And that's exactly what Ted Lieu exposed in real time, a pattern of hiding behind legality to avoid accountability, because here's how that game works. First, claim certain materials are under seal or controlled by the estate. Second, suggest releasing them could harm ongoing investigations. Third, promise that everything legally releasable has been shared. And finally, when pressed for proof, provide none. No court orders, no motions, no timestamps showing effort, just words. But trust us stopped working a long time ago. What Lieu made clear was that transparency isn't a slogan, it's a process. It means documenting what's sealed, why it's sealed, and under whose authority. It means showing that subpoenas were issued, interviews requested, and every possible witness questioned, even the inconvenient ones. It means proving that the system didn't fold under the weight of influence, and that's where Patel's answers failed. Because every "I'll get back to you," every "I don't know," every "I'll accept your representation" wasn't just a personal dodge, it was a reflection of an agency trapped between duty and politics. If the FBI truly lacks authority to access those materials, show the law. If the courts denied the motion, show the order. Without that paper trail, all the public sees is another institution shielding the powerful, and make no mistake, that perception alone erodes trust. When victims hear that vital evidence sits untouched in a private estate, when journalists who documented Epstein's world haven't been interviewed, when years pass without a single unredacted index, people stop believing justice is possible. They start believing justice is selective. What makes this story even darker is how quickly everyone forgets that this isn't just about salacious names or conspiracies, it's about hundreds of victims whose trauma has been used like political currency. Each delay, each excuse, each bureaucratic shrug, tells them their stories matter less than someone's reputation. But Lieu's anger in that hearing wasn't performance, it was frustration that after all this time, the most basic questions still don't have clear answers. Think about what that means. Epstein was arrested in 2019, he was dead weeks later, and since then, the public has seen only fragments, court filings, leaked depositions, vague indexes, not a single comprehensive inventory of what was seized, what was reviewed, or what remains sealed. No timeline of subpoenas, no public record of which journalists or witnesses were questioned. In any other case, that would be unthinkable. Here it's treated as normal. So what should happen next? Oversight doesn't need another viral clip, it needs documents. Congress has the power to demand a categorized inventory: what files, what drives, what photographs, what recordings, what financial ledgers. Each should be listed as either released, redacted, sealed, or withheld, with the legal justification spelled out. Victims' names can and should be protected, but the existence of evidence should not be hidden behind bureaucracy. Next, subpoena the Epstein estate for all remaining material, including private correspondence and hard drive contents. If the estate refuses, litigate it. Transparency isn't optional when the public's trust is at stake. Then, interview journalists and authors who claim first-hand knowledge, people like Wolf, to verify what evidence existed and where it might have gone. If tapes or recordings exist, secure them. If they were destroyed, show the record of destruction. Finally, release redacted witness summaries, known as 302S, that show whether new names were ever mentioned. Black out private details if necessary, but let the world see whether the investigation hit dead ends, or dead ends were created intentionally. Because when institutions operate in darkness, speculation fills the void, and speculation, once viral, becomes belief. Every unanswered question becomes proof of a cover-up. The longer the FBI waits, the harder it becomes to convince anyone that justice isn't being filtered through politics. This isn't about left or right, it's about power versus accountability. It's about whether the people entrusted with truth are willing to face it when it's inconvenient. Ted Lieu's line of questioning didn't expose classified secrets, it exposed complacency. The idea that enough transparency is good enough. But for a case that shattered public faith in the system, enough doesn't cut it. What this hearing showed, in its rawest form, is a battle between two definitions of justice, the one performed for cameras, and the one pursued for truth. The first gives statements, the second gives evidence. The first says we're cooperating, the second says here's the proof, and only one of those restores trust. In the end, Lieu's frustration wasn't about a single safe in Manhattan, it was about an entire chain of evidence that might never see the light of day. A safe that was supposed to unlock answers instead became a symbol of what happens when institutions guard their image more tightly than their integrity. The real story isn't the photos, or even who might be in them, it's the silence, the pauses, the I don't knows. Those are the fingerprints of a truth still buried. So maybe the question isn't what's inside Epstein's safe, maybe it's who's still holding the key, because until that key turns, the same questions will echo through every hearing, every news cycle, every late-night conversation online. Who knew? Who acted? Who looked away? And why? If the people in power can't answer those questions, the people watching have to keep asking them, because that's how transparency actually works, not by waiting for permission, but by demanding proof. So as the cameras shut off, and the transcripts fade into the archives, remember what this moment revealed. One congressman pushed, one director dodged, and in that dance between truth and evasion, the American public saw exactly how far the system still has to go, and that's where you come in. If you care about real transparency, not the polished kind, but the kind that forces institutions to act, then keep watching, keep questioning, and keep this story alive. Because accountability doesn't happen quietly, it happens when millions refuse to look away. If you found this breakdown helpful, if you believe sunlight is the best disinfectant, then make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes justice should mean something. Because the truth isn't just in the files, it's in our hands, and the more we demand it, the closer we get to finally opening that safe.